Hi, class. I hope this finds you well. I hope the writing of the exam went well and that you feel very proud of your work and that you did a good job. I really, really honestly believe that you guys are doing amazing work in terms of the discussion posts. You're really taking the content and working through it in your mind and applying it to the real world, which is really it's a sociologist's dream to have you be able to internalize the material and kind of make it real for yourselves. And so, we're just going to continue forward with this type of content, and we're moving into a couple classic articles again in social psychology. The Looking Glass Self is Charles Horton Cooley, and he is along the same lines as Mead, one of the classic social psychologists within symbolic interactionism. And his concept of the looking glass self is really, I think, interesting, fun, and it always makes me kind of like think about how we are such like products of our own environments, and how the other kind of the way in which others respond to us really does kind of create why am I having trouble with my words today for some reason? I don't really know. But our sense of self is kind of developed through our interactions with others, So it's kind of that same way of understanding how the self develops. We develop in the context of others, right? And that's kind of the whole symbolic interaction, social psychological kind of perspective into the self, is that everything that we've become is in response to what's around us, right? And so the looking glass self is this idea that we interpret other people's reactions and then we develop our self-concept. And so it's like we're looking in the mirror and seeing ourselves when others respond to us. And so that's the first article. So you're reading Classic Cooley, which is classic and kind of that genre of language and wording. So dig into that. It's by no means as kind of thick or dense as Mead, but it's still classic scholarship. And then you're reading The Digital Self, which is newer, 2005, which is Zhao's kind of, like, I would say it is kind of an updated looking glass self, in the sense that it's applying the looking glass self to our digital selves. And so as you read The Digital Self, I hope it becomes kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I see how that is and I see how that isn't. The thing about the digital self, and what I would say about everything you're reading in this class, and just in general when you're studying things, contextualize it. Always contextualize what you're reading. Who's the author? What is their frame of reference? When was it written? Those all kind of tell a backstory that's really important. I think a lot of times we just presume expertise in a discipline because somebody's written something, but it's also really important to understand the context, the era, and whose voice it is. And if we're especially in a class like social psychology, where we're saying like it's a perspective, it's one way of knowing, each of these authors are providing their expertise based on, rightfully so, they have area of expertise to speak on it, but who are they? And how does that all kind of connect with the culture at large? Those are things that I want you to consider. And so Digital Self is something that was written, at this point, 15 years ago, regarding online presence. And so I think in the very beginning, there's a disclaimer that says, that was 2005. And what we know about our digital selves now is that they've vastly morphed and shifted, and there's so many different ways in which to have a digital self that were not necessarily available back when this article was written. So, obviously I think, you're going to be thinking of that in terms of the discussion forum, like how does that kind of relate to what you read? But that being said, we all have a digital self, right? I mean, like, this is my digital self. Good Lord. Everything we're doing this semester is via our digital self, right? We're not sitting in a classroom. We're not interpreting others' reactions in a face-to-face interaction. It's all being done virtually. So this semester in particular, the digital self is very salient and very, very relevant to what we're discussing and how we're living our lives. So, yeah, that's what you're doing this week. And I've got just little bits of things, my prezzies kind of are like my notes to myself that I would talk about if we were talking, but instead we're not. And so you can look at them. And then I have a clip and a bio on Cooley because, again, backstory is everything. It's very interesting to me to know where people come from and their stories because when they're creating knowledge, I want to know how their lives led them to the point that they created that knowledge, if that makes any sense. So anyways, thanks for all your hard work. Thanks for doing the deep discussion forums that have really been so far wonderful, just wonderful. So keep up the good work and yeah, take good care.